Let's get things underway here, taking a look at the opening hands. A bit of an awkward one here for Shahar. Only the 2 Kazandu Mammoths is going to send that back and find a better looking hand. 2 Edgewall Innkeepers, unfortunately no adventure creatures, but does have a turn 3 Mammoth if he wants it.
Yeah, this hand is definitely a keep considering you are already on a 6, but again, only 1 red source, a bit awkward. No adventure creatures, a bit awkward. So it's certainly not a perfect hand by any means, but something that Shahar will settle for in his current position.
On the other side of things, Gregor's hand looks really good indeed with the early ramp and Wolfula Haven, as well as some card draw there with Behold the
Oh,
Multiverse and a Binding the Old Gods to take care of any threat that Shahar might deploy. So things looking good on the other side of the table here.
yeah, I say not a perfect hand by any means for Shahar. I can't really say that about Greg's hand. That is pretty close to a perfect hand coming from the Sultai Ultimatum deck. You have the turn 2 ramp. You now have 2 different turn 3 follow-ups depending on what Shahar deploys. So if Shahar just goes for this Kazandu Mammoth, which is pretty likely considering he has a Fabled Passage as a follow-up, Greg has that Binding the Old Gods, and he's powering his way towards that Emergent Ultimatum.
He is indeed ramp after removal after ramp. It's just going to be absolutely painful here for Shahar if things keep going the way that they are there for Kowalski. Has found an Oran's Epiphany, which we don't typically see, or we hadn't seen in some of the other Temur lists. So I wonder if we'll see that play a big part in this matchup. But first things first, let's get Kazandu Mammoth down on the board, in for 1 with the Edgewall Innkeeper. And Elspeth's Nightmare drawn off the top. Goodness me, what are these draws?
Just all the tools he needs to deal with this board. Can play Binding this turn, next turn, depending on what he draws, may just go for Nightmare on the Innkeeper, plus a Foretell Behold, and the turn after that, make sure the way is clear from Shahar, no counter spells, and then you get to just go for Emergent Ultimatum, and the game is over, and everything hurts, and it's disaster. But at the moment, it's still okay. Shahar drew an adventure creature, he gets a card draw, and this can make the way for this Goldspan Dragon to come down on turn 5. Shahar would have loved some sort of counterspell follow-up, but he just doesn't have it.
Did find another adventure creature, which is a super nice find. So if our little Edgewall Innkeeper gets to stick around, that's an extra card there for Shahar. Land number 5 would mean that Goldspan Dragon's online. But, Finding the Old Gods, gonna go and find a Triumph, get that on the battlefield, and make sure we can cast this Ultimatum for Kowalski ASAP.
Yeah, there is some temptation to play the Binding here, destroy the Bone Crusher Giant, but I think the fact that Elspeth's Nightmare can ensure the way is clear for your Ultimatum on the next turn, it just makes it that it's too good of a play here for Gregor to give up on. So just play it, destroy the Innkeeper, take down that card advantage piece from Shahar, and then make sure that it will clear the way for your Ultimatum on the next turn. And this is about as fast as you can go from the Sultai deck, and
Yeah.
you're doing it with protection. You can't ask for more.
No, you really can't. These sagas are just so incredibly potent. I mean, Elspeth's Nightmare, like you mentioned, giving the information to Kowalski, being able to see that the way is clear. So,
Oh, it's the
Patriot
worst land for
Biome.
Shahar.
Yeah, it's like a fifth untapped land would have been awesome there to get the Goldspan Dragon ticking. So now he is just going to protect this hand as best he can by getting Oran's Epiphany foretold away, keep it safe from Elspeth's Nightmares Chapter 2, and swing in there for 4 points of damage.
There is some value for Shahar by foretelling this Alrund's Epiphany this turn. He is representing a potential side coming. There are 2 in the list. So for Greg, this is now the little shell game of is that Alrund's Epiphany or is it the counterspell? Am I afraid of it enough to not play my Emergent Ultimatum? Let Shahar untap and have this Goldspan Dragon. The problem is if you don't play into it this turn, because you don't have instant speed interaction, Shahar can just play Goldspan Dragon, attack, and leave upside coming again the next turn. So you'll find yourself in the same position, but perhaps worse. If you use the Emergent Ultimatum here and that is the counterspell, well, then you have Binding for the Dragon the next turn and you can readjust. So I think in Greg's position, however scary that Foretold card may be, it's you have to take the risk and at least consider going for the Emergent Ultimatum.
He's thinking about it long and hard here. Certainly several options available to him. Does he think he has it is the big question here, as we'll get our land drop for turn, and it looks like it's Ultimatum time.
No fear, let's do it.
Nice.
You see Shahar eyes go wide, and I,
Well, poop.
I think Shahar was hoping that Epiphany would do the job of scaring Greg away, but Greg's not falling for it.
Emergent ultimatum on the stack here. The only response that Shahar has is a big ol' stomp to the face. But I think what's going to come out of this ultimatum is far more scary.
And Greg may be in a position where he doesn't even need the extra turn. He could consider just going for Vorinclex, Tybalt, and Cure Best the Sea God, and no matter what Shahar gives him, he'll get a powerful 1-2 punch. So he could actually forego the Alrund's Epiphany here if he so wanted to, or just forego the Vorinclex and go with the 1-2 punch plus an extra turn.
Vorinclex, Elrond's Epiphany, and Kiora Best the Sea God. What is Shahar most afraid of here?
Probably the Cure Best the Sea God. He can at least hope if he gives Grzegorz the Vorinclex plus Aaron's Epiphany, he takes 14 damage, but he may be able to come back using his own Aaron's Epiphany. If you give him the Cure Best the Sea God plus either of those cards, it's going to be really difficult for you to come back.
That's just such a beating. That big ol' Vorinclex on the battlefield, not something you want to deal with. But it looks like he sent back the extra turn, so Kiora the Sea God and Vorinclex are going to come down. Because of Vorinclex's ability, Kiora the Sea God is going to go to Chapter 2 immediately and permanently tap down this Bone Crusher Giant.
Permanently for a turn at least. 8 Hexproof down, Bonecrusher Giant not untapping, 6 damage coming on through, and the most important thing, the next time Grzegorz gets a turn, he's going to steal a permanent from Shahar, so Shahar doesn't even have the ability of playing the Goldspan Dragon here and hoping it's good enough. He may need to Epiphany into something, but there aren't that many good draws here against this board.
Very tricky situation here. Needs a 6th land in order to Elrond's Epiphany into something else.
That's
It's
not
a
it.
mystical dispute, and that's not going to do it, unfortunately, for Shahar.
And I think that's just game.
Yeah, I mean, Kiora the Sea God can take whatever it wants. You know, get the Bone Crusher Giant on Kowalski's side. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point. What he picks is just so much damage coming through. It's lethal on board. Whatever blocker is deployed will be taken. If only that counted abilities, huh?
If only. And with this Cure Best of Sea God stealing this Bone Crusher Giant, there's just no real worry of anything as 14 damage is lethal and Shahar has nothing to bluff.
So game 1 goes to Grzegorz Kowalski as we are going to get ready here for game number 2. Let's take a look at the sideboard. What do we have to do against this very powerful ultimatum deck?
Shahar will definitely want to take out some of his blue cards like those Hours Epiphanies. We saw 1, it was a bit too slow there. And 2, once the option of counterspells comes in for the blue deck, you really just want more pressure and tools to interact. You want more mystical disputes, more sod comings, and cards like Clothis can actually do some work as well. On the other side for the Sultai deck, well, you want to be a bit less heavy as well. You want to take out some of your board wipes. Instead, you want to bring in potent threats that protect you against these dragons, which can be problematic. So we see the Coma come in, the 2 Elder Gargaroths, the 2nd copy of Pelucranos, and the Shark Typhoons. All of these are cards that get around at least some of the counter spells the Temur deck is presenting, and are also good against Goldspan Dragon. All of these cards are with that in mind, except for those eliminates that are trying to survive until the late game.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of these sideboard cards in previous matches where, you know, Coma's trying to tap down as many creatures as possible, whereas Clothis is just sitting there pinging away. It's just, you know, the impact that these cards have on the matchup is palpable, and we might get to see that in this next game here between these two players. Just a reminder to everyone who is watching, this is an elimination match, so whoever survives here carries on their hopes of a grand finals position. The other player, unfortunately, doesn't have too far to go, but yes, they are going home after this.
Yeah, Grzegorz sideboarding is very much a response to Shahar's list. We see him taking out one copy of Emergent Ultimatum. That's because Shahar has multiple copies of Miscast, a ton of mystical disputes, these cheap counters they can really easily deal with what this Sultai deck is bringing.
So let's take a look at the opening hands here. A pretty decent one here for Shahar. Has interactions, got the Bone Crusher Giant, and has the Love Struck Beast. So the 1, 2, 3 punch that he's looking for to get things going. On the other side of the battlefield, not looking super good here for Kowalski, who has those two big dum-dums in hand that he'd love to find off of an ultimatum if he kept them in. But gonna send back Valky, God of Lies, to the bottom of the library.
Yeah, this six from Gregor is certainly reasonable. He does have an Omen of the Sea for early card selection. If he can find a green source, that Wolfwillow Haven will try to get the job done in terms of ramping it to that Gargaroth faster. From Shahar's side of things, a little awkward as he doesn't have an untapped green source on turn one, meaning he can't make that Heart's Desire token from Lovestruck Beast, but Fable Passage will take care of that, and now he can get started with his curve and try to bring the beats before Gregor is able to put together that ramp and that Gargaroth and get to the point where the game kind of gets away from Shahar.
Oh, here's a spicy little meatball of a card. Palaka Predation. I haven't seen that cost this weekend yet. Money, you can tell me all about that, can't you?
Yeah, so when we were working on the Sultai list, we were talking about how we wanted cards that had impact in the Sultai mirror. We were talking about whether we wanted a potential duress or something that would give you more value, not only able to attack them before they're able to play an Emergent Ultimatum, but also another card that you can include in potential Emergent Ultimatum packages of your own as preemptive defense. And we realized that we could actually slot this effect into a land slot over something like a Temple of Malady, and we ended up running two Palaka Predations in this list as a way of doing exactly that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Kowalski goes for that, or if he's more interested in getting the ramp plan online here with the Cultivate. Hopefully get to a board wipe of sorts against this growing mass of creatures here on Shahar's side of things.
Yeah, this is good early ramp here from Kowalski. The big problem is right now there's two copies of Brazen Borrower in Shahar's hand. Those do a great job of keeping Elder Gargoth off the board. Normally, that's fine, you can just replay it, but because you're already facing down so much pressure in this Bone Crusher Giant, this Lovestruck Beast, potentially if it gets played, and this 1/1 token, Gregor might just start falling too far behind if he goes for this Gargoth multiple times and gets it bounced.
Here we're going to see Obosh Prey Piercer brought to hand, and there is Emergent Ultimatum off the top of the library for Kowalski. So a couple options here.
That changes things a lot. Now Kowalski actually has available to him use Wolfwillow Haven plus Palaka Predation this turn to get a look at Shahar's hand, clear the way from a potential counterspell, and set up for Ultimatum next turn. It won't quite work out how he wants it to because he's going to get the news of there being double Brazen Borrower, meaning that Shahar can disrupt the ramp from the Wolfwillow Haven and not give Gregor access to that ultimatum, but it's at least tempting enough that we're going to see him set up and try to go for it.
So here is the Wolfwillow Haven. It's going to come down on the swamp. Will potentially set himself up for an ultimatum next turn. Doesn't go for the Palaka Predation. It's just going to keep the mana up for a Shark Typhoon, perhaps.
Yeah, Shark Typhoon for 2 here would be able to get rid of this 2/2 token or force Shahar's hand in using this Petty Theft from the Brazen Borrower. Once again, giving Greg more options here and try to stem the bleeding, as well as once you get the 1/1 off the board, Lovestruck Beast would not be able to attack until another 1/1 is put there.
Yeah, so it goes towards the Stomp. Going to get rid of this 2/2 and make sure that the max damage gets through here, taking Kowalski down to 9.
Yeah, we're going to see if Shahar will reveal his hand that he doesn't have a counterspell and use a Petty Theft here on that Wolfwillow Haven to try to prevent Gregor from playing this ultimatum, or whether he's just going to bluff that he has something and hope Greg doesn't call it.
Oh, very, very tense turn here for Kowalski. Does he have it or doesn't he? Looks like he's going to go for the Palaka predation,
Yeah,
just to
this
make sure the
is
way is clear.
it's certainly tempting. He does have that eliminate as backup, but I don't actually know how good this will be. Shahar won't be playing a Brazen Bar in response. He'll likely know that the Obosh will be the card that has to get taken here, as these borrowers are presenting too much potential damage. If Greg takes a borrower and leaves Obosh, Shahar can just flash the other one in and win through an eliminate.
Yeah, that's going to be bad news indeed if these Brazen Borrowers get on the battlefield. So, very important decision here for Kowalski, taking a look at the hand of Shahar Shenhar. Knew about the Obosh, didn't know about the Brazen Borrowers, but has to get rid of the powerful companion to stay alive through this next turn.
All right. This is still awkward for Gregor. She plays the
Yeah.
Seagate Restoration there as a land. However, if Shahar petty thefts this Wolf Willow Haven, Greg will actually be missing the triple green he needs to cast Emergent Ultimatum next turn. So Shahar still has a route to disrupt this potential ultimatum. We'll see if this is something he's interested in going for and hoping Greg doesn't have that third green, or whether he's just going to play this as a creature and try to go aggressive and hope that it's not there.
Yeah, tough decision here to be made for Shahar. Also has the Triumph to cycle, but it does look like he's going to go for the Brazen Borrower as a creature and just try and force through as much damage as he possibly can. It's going to take Kowalski down to 1 if these creatures do not get answered, but we do see that eliminate, and that'll take care of the creature that doesn't hurt when you kill it, i.e. the Brazen Borrower.
1, maybe 2 draws here for Shahar. Kowalski knows that Elder Gargaroth is not good enough. Fabled Passage not going to do it. Shahar still has the out available to him of bouncing this Wolf Willow Haven and hoping there isn't a green source there, but he doesn't have that information, so it looks like a very bizarre line to go for in this position.
Looks like he's interested in developing the board further and getting out the creatures that are currently on an adventure. So Fabled Passage joins the battlefield. It's going to go and grab a land from the library and develop 2 threats here, perhaps?
We'll see. He could certainly develop the Lovestruck Beast and just pass with the Brazen Borrower. Brazen Borrower can disrupt some of the Emergent Ultimatum packages that Shahar may be looking for, but now that Mystical Dispute, oh my god, it goes a long way in making sure that this game plan from Gregor is going to work.
Here we go. Emergent Ultimatum with a Mystical Dispute backup. This is not what Shahar wants to see. He's so close here to killing Kowalski, and Emergent Ultimatum is just gonna make a mockery of those plans.
I believe there is a copy of Shadow's Verdict left in Gregor's deck, so he could go for something like Vorinclex, Cure, Best the Sea God, Shadow's Verdict, and try to set up for a lethal. He could go for that sort of package with Auron's Epiphany instead, but I think for Greg, the 2 goals here are neutralizing this board and trying to deal with what Shahar is presenting in hand in that Brazen Borrower by putting some pressure on.
Pick your poison time. Shahar takes a look at the options. It's Shadow's Verdict, Auron's Epiphany, or Elder Gargaroth.
This
what would
is
you pick,
really
Monty?
I would probably be putting Shadow's Verdict back in the deck and hoping that with this Brazen Borrower, I'm able to neutralize the Gargaroth long enough to win this game, but unfortunately the dispute is there.
Dispute is just ready and waiting for a certain blue spell that's hanging out in Shahar's hand. So there we go. There's Auron's Epiphany. The 1/1s are on the battlefield. Here comes Elder Gargaroth. And take your next turn, Mr. Kowalski.
Yeah, Shahar has the option of petty thefting this Gargaroth on the end step if he wanted, just to try to do it while Greg doesn't have as many cards in hand, maybe not access to as many counter spells as possible, but now this is completely online, and if this attack gets in, this is going to really slip away from Shahar now.
Yeah, Elder Gargaroth, no fear, only the 5/5 there to worry about. Now, do we go for life? Do we go for creatures? Card draw? What suits him best?
He has full information on Shahar's hand, so he is feeling pretty safe in this position. I think both life and beasts are quite tempting here. I would not go for card draw. You either want to go wide on the board or try to pad that life total as you play a second Elder Gargaroth there.
Ah, 2 Elder Gargaroths. My goodness. What's better than 1 Elder Gargaroth? Well, second, of course.
Yeah, really like this position. We have seen that Gregorz has been punished by not padding his life total in the past.
Hmm.
Doesn't want to make that mistake again. Ketria Triumph giving Shahar the potential to have 2 cards that Gregorz doesn't know about by next turn. So just measuring himself and playing it safe. I think this is an excellent call as Sultai now looking primed to take this match.
Second Elder Gargaroth is on the stack. Brazen Borrower won't resolve at the current moment. Shahar Shenhar is waiting for his turn. Kowalski's taken 2. I don't think we've seen 3 turns in a row this weekend, or have we? With these ultimatum decks.
I think we've seen the third turn. The other player conceded before the turn happened, but there has been at least one sequence where it looked like 3 turns were in the book in the cards.
Nice. Who doesn't like extra turns? Yorion Skynomad brought to hand 1 blue mana kept up from Mystical Dispute. Ketria Triumph likely to be cycled here on the end step. So that Shahar can hopefully find something to help him out here.
There's one unknown card in Gregorz's hand, and if that card is Mystical Dispute, Shahar doesn't want to play into it by playing that Brazen Borrower on the end step or Petty Theft. Unfortunately, with only 2 blue mana and the green-red pathway in hand, he can't do both Brazen Borrower and you saw it coming here. So still awkward position, and no way to get these Gargaroths off the board, or at least both of them here for Shahar.
Yeah. And if both of them start making beasts, they're just going to start running over the defense line here from Shahar Shenhar.
Yeah, Elder Gargaroth, one of the best cards in this Sultai Ultimatum deck in this matchup, perhaps the actual best one being Coma, but because Gargaroth comes down sooner, it does such a great job of immediately stabilizing the board in most situations, and then giving you a way to come back into the game.
So we see a Foretell there of Sword coming. Gonna follow that up with a Timbercrown Pathway. Will we see a Bonecrusher Giant, or are we setting up here for a Brazen Borrower bounce with the Counterspell backup?
Hey, I think you're more interested in the bounce with the counterspell backup, with the potential mana to pay for a Mystical Dispute. So Shahar just trying to pace himself, but these Gargaroths, they're going to just keep on trucking.
Oh yeah. Once they get rolling, it's very difficult to slow them down, as now Kowalski is just measuring the battlefield. Can get in through the air with the birds. One of the Gargaroths would die to a double block or even a triple block if he needed to. And here comes Yorion's Sky Nomad. I'm gonna bounce a few things here. Get an extra card off Omen of the Sea.
Yeah, certainly interested in bouncing the Omen of the Sea. Could bounce the Wolf Willow Haven as well. There's no real reason not to, and doing so would enable you to have some extra green mana on a different land potentially if you don't end up tapping out this turn. This will at least get the Sod coming away from Shahar, and now Gregorz knows that if Shahar goes for that Petty Theft, once again his Mystical Dispute is good. So he forced the issue before Shahar could cast this Petty Theft, and now he gets to rumble on in with these Gargaroths being fully okay with a trade with one of these creatures, likely the Lovestruck Beast.
Yeah, get the biggest thing off the board. The second Bonecrusher Giant will be able to take care of the second Elder Gargaroth, but by that point the damage could be done, as both of these creatures will be potentially making 3/3 beasts.
Yeah, and here's the bad news for Shahar. The Mystical Dispute is there. It was the one card he didn't know about. You see the nod from him as he realizes, I'm in trouble.
He's in big trouble at that. Lovestruck Beast and Bonecrusher Giant have a lot of work to do here to get one of these Gargaroth off the battlefield. Let's see what he goes for here. Draw a card and draw a card. All right. Ooh,
Yeah, with
Shark Typhoon.
and Heartless Act.
And Heartless
No.
Act. No. Oh, it's just going from bad to worse here for Shahar, as this block is going to fail miserably. Both of these Gargaroth are going to survive here with the Heartless Act being drawn.
Yeah, Gregor had perfect information there. This Bone Crusher Giant is in the adventure zone. It is not in the hand, so nothing from Shahar being represented in terms of things to worry about for next turn. And Colts Fan Dragon looking at the word reach on Elder Gargaroth and just hanging his head in shame as I believe Gregor